Supply chain challenges continue. What are you doing to protect your business? How would you like to be able to easily switch network vendors? What if you could save money on your next switch purchase? Vendor lock-in sucks, but adopting multiple vendors is hard. Staff is often trained on a single vendor, and they'd probably need a Rosetta Stone to be able to decipher network device configs across vendors. What you really need is to be able to design the best network for your business needs, regardless of the underlying vendor. With Apstra, you have the tool you need to make this possible. Apstra's intent-based networking platform is a multi-vendor design, deployment, and operations tool that any network engineer can use. They don't need to be experts on one network operating system, or really any network operating system. They just need to understand networking. And Apstra's multi-vendor capabilities allow you to insert the right device for the job, regardless of vendor. So you can choose a new leaf switch, not just based on capabilities, but also based on lead time. In this demo, we're going to deploy a new virtual network onto running data center fabrics in 2 different data centers. In the San Francisco data center, we're running a pair of spine switches, a rack with a redundant pair of leaf switches, and a second rack with a single leaf switch. All of these switches are from Juniper Networks. We'll drill down into the stage menu to create this virtual network, choosing VXLAN as the network type, enabling DHCP, assigning a subnet and gateway address, creating a template for tagged interfaces on the leaf switches, and choose which switches we're going to deploy to. Then we'll assign this virtual network to the available server-facing interfaces on each leaf switch. Notice that we didn't enter any Juniper syntax. We simply entered the required information needed to design this virtual network. Apstra will validate that required information as we go, and will catch mistakes and let us know if something is missing before we move on to the next step. Then Apstra will render the Juniper configuration syntax for us. Let's take a look at some of the rendered configs that we're about to push to the network. That looks like Junos. Now I love Junos, but I'm glad I didn't have to type all that. Finally, we'll commit these changes, and Apstra will push the configuration changes onto the devices that we're using for this service. Simple. Now let's take a look at the Seattle data center. Here we're running a multi-vendor network. There's a rack with a couple of redundant Arista leaf switches, a rack with a single Cisco leaf switch, and a couple of spine switches that are running the Sonic OS. Now I don't know about you, but I would have a really tough time configuring a new virtual network in this data center if I had to do it manually. Even if I knew my way around each of these network operating systems, it would be really challenging to have to remember the unique syntax of each without making mistakes. This kind of network seems risky, but not with Apstra. We're going to follow the same workflow that we used in the San Francisco data center. We'll create a new virtual network, enter the same type of information, create the same type of interface template, and follow the same steps to choose which switches we deploy to. We'll follow the same process to assign this network to the leaf switch interfaces, and we're done. Again, we didn't need to remember any vendor-specific syntax. We didn't even need to care if it was an Arista or a Cisco leaf node. As we can see by looking at the rendered configs, Apstra took care of the vendor-specific stuff for us. Apstra gives you a reliable way to deploy networks and make changes across any data center network vendor's devices. You'll be able to shift to a different vendor's device easily without worrying about your team's expertise on any one vendor's CLI. This is how you can short-circuit supply chain issues. And if you've got an achievable multi-vendor strategy in place, you'll be in a much stronger position to negotiate a better price when it comes time to purchase your next data center switch. Our customer Rafizan even said that they were able to name not 1 but 3 hardware vendors on their latest RFP, and told their purchasing department to just buy from whoever can deliver first. With Apstra, you can free your data center network from vendor lock-in and short-circuit the supply chain crisis.